It was a cold morning in April, 1994, in a quiet village nestled in the rolling hills of Rwanda. The sun was barely awake, the sky a fragile pale blue that barely warmed the frost-covered earth. But beneath the calm, something unspeakable was stirring. A storm that would sweep through the village and erase everything in its path. She was just 17 years old when it all began. A girl with trembling fingers clutching a worn family photo, the scent of damp earth mixing with the acrid smoke of burning homes filling the air around her. Her name was Amina. No one knew how long she would survive that day or the days that followed. But one thing was certain. Everything she loved was about to vanish. Amina grew up in a world like many others. The laughter of children playing in dusty streets, the smell of fresh bread baking early in the morning, the warm embrace of a family who dreamed of a better tomorrow. Her parents, farmers who worked tirelessly on the hillsides, had always told her stories about resilience and hope. Her mother's hands, rough from years of tending the land, were soft when she braided Amina's hair. Her father's deep voice carried wisdom as he taught her the names of the stars that guided their nights. But Rwanda in the early 90s was changing. Whispers of tension and fear crept in like shadows stretching across a sunlit room. Politics became poison, turning neighbor against neighbor. The fragile peace was breaking. In the village, everyone knew the ethnic lines drawn quietly by history, Hutu and Tutsi. But for Amina, they were just labels, distant and meaningless compared to the love she knew at home. That morning, though, those lines turned lethal. The first warning came as a low rumble, like thunder but without clouds. From the forest's edge, figures emerged, men armed, faces hardened, eyes void of mercy. They moved swiftly, leaving destruction in their wake. Amina's family tried to flee, clutching what little they could carry. But the village was surrounded, the noose tightening with terrifying speed. She remembers the smell best, smoke thick with burning wood and fear, the sharp tang of blood mixing with wet earth, the screams echoing from houses once filled with laughter. Her father's last words to her were simple: run, find safety, live. And so she ran. But survival was only the beginning of Amina's nightmare. For days, she hid in the dense underbrush, eating whatever she could find, listening to the chaos that swallowed her home. Her heart ached for her family, her mother's gentle voice, her brother's quick smile, all lost to the violence that no one in the world seemed to stop. Eventually, she was discovered, not by the soldiers who hunted her, but by a group of strangers who had fled the same terror. They brought her to a refugee camp, a sprawling sea of tents and broken souls. Here, the truth began to unravel. As news spread, the international community branded it as a genocide, a systematic campaign of slaughter targeting the Tutsi minority and moderate Hutus. Over 800,000 lives were taken in just 100 days. But Amina's story revealed something far darker. A chilling network of complicity and silence, where neighbors turned executioners, and the world's indifference was a silent accomplice. She told investigators how her closest friend's family betrayed her, how some who wore the face of mercy concealed weapons and hatred. The horrors weren't just random acts of violence. They were planned, orchestrated by those who had power and no conscience. One name kept coming up, a local militia leader known for his brutality, yet protected by those above him. A man who disappeared as the world's cameras finally arrived, leaving behind a trail of blood and unanswered questions. In the camp, Amina tried to piece her life back together. The faces around her were etched with loss. Mothers who had lost children, fathers who had lost hope, children too young to understand the world they were born into. Her body was weak, but her spirit hardened. She promised herself she would not just survive. She would fight to ensure the truth was told. Years later, with trembling hands and a voice strengthened by pain, she stood before international courts. Her testimony helped convict some of those responsible, yet many remained free, their shadows lurking in places untouched by justice. Her story, broadcast to the world, became a symbol, not just of survival but of resilience and the haunting question: how could humanity look away? But what happened after Amina's testimony? Who were the shadowy figures still protecting the killers? And what secrets did the international community bury to protect their own interests? After fleeing into exile, Amina found herself swept up in a maze of chaos. Refugee camps bursting at the seams, humanitarian aid that arrived late and sometimes not at all, and whispers of justice that felt frustratingly distant. Her wounds ran deeper than the scars on her skin. Every day, she wrestled with the memory of betrayal, the people she once trusted who had raised the weapons that destroyed her family. But what gnawed at her most was the silence. The silence of the international community. The silence of governments who watched the carnage unfold through grainy news footage, yet hesitated to act. Inside the camp, Amina met others like her, survivors haunted not only by loss but by suspicion. They spoke in hushed tones of hidden networks protecting war criminals, of politicians and businessmen profiting from the chaos, and of a dark world where justice was negotiable. Her testimony before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, shocked many, but beneath the surface lay stories that revealed a far more complicated and sinister truth. Amina uncovered evidence that some foreign governments had prior knowledge of the genocide plans, but chose diplomatic silence to preserve strategic alliances. Secret cables leaked years later showed cold calculations. Political stability in the region was prioritized over saving lives. Even more disturbing, local officials complicit in the killings escaped prosecution because they held critical information about those abroad who funded the militias. In many cases, those with the blood of hundreds on their hands slipped quietly into exile or new positions of power. Amina's investigators followed the money, tracing financial trails that linked local militia leaders to international arms dealers, corrupt officials, and shadowy intermediaries. The genocide was not only an ethnic massacre. It was a brutal business, fueled by greed and enabled by global indifference. One evening, in a cramped office lit only by a flickering fluorescent bulb, Amina sat with a weary journalist who had risked everything to expose these truths. Outside, the rain hammered the tin roof, drowning out distant gunfire still echoing in some parts of the country. The journalist slid a folder across the table. Inside, names, dates, coded communications. "They didn't just let this happen," he whispered, voice cracked by exhaustion. "They made it happen." Amina's hands trembled as she traced the names, realizing the horror was far from over. As the years passed, it became clear that the fight for justice wasn't just about catching war criminals. It was a dangerous game of geopolitics. Leaders who once condemned the genocide quietly lobbied to block certain trials, protecting allies and economic interests. International aid was funneled through corrupt channels, sometimes ending up in the pockets of former militia commanders. In the dusty halls of power, deals were made behind closed doors. The truth became currency, bought, sold, and hidden. Amina watched helplessly as some perpetrators walked free, while survivors like her struggled to rebuild shattered lives with little support. Throughout it all, Amina wrestled with guilt. Survivors' guilt, they called it, the unbearable weight of having lived when so many died. She dreamed of her mother's voice, of her father's steady hands, of the brother whose laughter now only echoed in memory. In quiet moments, she questioned whether speaking out was enough, whether the truth could ever be truly told when so many powerful forces wanted it buried. Yet, despite the pain, Amina found purpose. Her voice became a beacon for others, a symbol that the genocide's victims were not forgotten. She traveled the world, sharing her story, demanding accountability, and reminding humanity that silence is complicity. But even as Amina's fight gained international attention, a shadow lingered, a secret she uncovered that could topple powerful figures and shake the foundations of governments. A secret hidden deep within confidential files, suppressed investigations, and veiled threats. One that some would kill to keep silent. The secret was finally out. Hidden in a stack of dusty archives smuggled out by a whistleblower from a government office, the files bore names and orders, showing how high-ranking officials coordinated attacks and covered up atrocities. The documents detailed meetings, financial transfers, and chilling decisions to prioritize political power over human lives. Amina held the papers in her hands, feeling the weight of history and hope intertwined. These were the keys to justice. The revelations sparked outrage worldwide. Human rights organizations amplified the call for accountability. Governments faced intense scrutiny, unable to ignore the mounting evidence. But the path to justice was perilous. Amina and those close to her received threats. Anonymous calls in the dead of night, shadows lurking near their homes. Allies disappeared and trust grew fragile. Yet, Amina refused to be silenced. With unwavering courage, she traveled from city to city, testifying, lobbying, and inspiring others to stand against impunity. At the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the courtroom became a stage for truth. Survivors stepped forward, their voices echoing with pain and resilience. The accused, once untouchable, faced the piercing gaze of justice. Amina's testimony was a cornerstone, her voice steady, her presence a living testament to survival. The prosecution presented the secret files, dismantling alibis and exposing the breadth of the conspiracy. One by one, the perpetrators were convicted, militia leaders, corrupt officials, and those who had hidden behind power and silence. Sentences ranged from decades in prison to life, a monumental victory for a people who had long sought justice. For Amina, the verdicts were bittersweet. No punishment could restore what was lost, but they marked a turning point, a refusal to forget, a warning that such darkness would not go unchallenged. In a quiet moment after the trials, Amina stood before the memorial where her family once lived. The wind carried whispers of the past, laughter, tears, love. She spoke softly, a vow carried on the breeze. Justice is not just punishment. It is memory. It is truth. It is the courage to face tomorrow. Her journey had transformed pain into purpose, loss into legacy. The genocide left scars on a nation, but also sparked a movement for reconciliation, healing, and rebuilding. Amina became a beacon of hope, teaching new generations about the cost of hatred and the power of forgiveness. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest chapters, the human spirit can endure and triumph. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Amina's story, a testament to survival, justice, and the enduring fight for truth. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that reveal the resilience of the human spirit. And remember, justice begins with remembering. If Amina's story touched you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to never miss the next gripping true crime tale. Share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Your voice matters in keeping these stories alive. Hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when Part 2 and Part 3 drop. Together, we can honor the survivors, seek justice, and ensure that history's darkest moments are never forgotten. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and thank you for being part of this journey.